Here's the news on Diablo 4's first season and how it all works. It launches July 20th at 10 a.m. Pacific time. On this episode, I'm going to be talking all about it and much more with Forbes' Paul Tassi. You do not need to pay for Diablo 4's Season of the Malignant. All you get for paying for the Season Pass is access to the premium tiers. Out of 100 levels, there are 63 premium tiers. So for about $10, you'll get an armor set that works for all 5 classes, a mount, and mount armor. There are also some class-specific transmogs in there, emotes, headstones for those sweet deaths, and 666 platinum in return for your grind.
Ooh, so deliciously evil.
Before I touch on the fact that you'll need to start a new character from level 1 and what that means for transferring your map and renown track progress, let's talk about what you're doing in this season. It's got a new seasonal quest line that is not a continuation of the main story, but rather something to the side. I'm going to insert the obvious guesswork right here and say, shocker, the first expansion will be the official continuation of the Diablo 4 main story. There are 2 expansions currently in development, by the way. This season will be an aside that centers on a main character named Cormand, a former priest of the Cathedral of Light, who will be training you to capture malignant hearts and convert them into sweet, sweet new build aspects. Okay, so what's the point of starting over and playing Season of the Malignant outside of the story? In the words of the lead producer, Tim Ismay,
kind of stupid new broken builds that are hopefully balanced, but they are extremely powerful. So these are new options of how you can play the game.
Because seasons exist on a new server realm, this means this craziness is limited to the seasonal period. Again, more on how this affects your current character later. For the gameplay loop, you'll be chasing corrupted enemies. Not every enemy is corrupted, so you'll need to hunt down these new elites. When you kill what they call a partly corrupted enemy, it drops its malignant heart, which you then need to try to capture with a cage of binding. That triggers the true event, a bigger elite that is fully corrupted. If you defeat that, it will drop a caged heart. That then becomes an item that you can use, which can be slotted into new gear that you find which has infested sockets, in place of normal gems basically. But it has way more power like a legendary aspect. One example we saw in the reveal showed this. Critical strikes electrically charge the enemy for 3 seconds, causing lightning to arc between them and other charged enemies. The catch is that the color of your caged heart has to match the color of the infested socket. Red, blue, etc. are basically these new categories. Sound confusing? It might be until you get your hands on it, but rest easy, there's also a very rare type of caged heart that will go into any color socket. According to the footage shown, once inserted, hearts can be replaced but not removed, which will destroy your previously socketed caged heart. Related, if you take an item to a jeweler and socket it, the gear will get a colored, infested socket this season. There are 32 malignant heart powers across 4 categories. By the way, you can also break down previous malignant hearts at the crafter to craft new items, including what they call invokers. You then take those to what are called malignant tunnel dungeons, and at the end of those, you can use the invoker on an outgrowth. So there, you can target specific types of malignant powers as part of the endgame. And as part of that grind, you can face increasingly powerful enemies for better powers. Kind of like nightmare dungeons, it seems. As a side note, they are also adding some new legendary powers and uniques to the game along with the season. Okay, if you wrapped your head around all of that, now it's time to understand what it means to start a new character at level 1 for this season. While you are starting over, it's not quite that flat. You'll need to be sure to log into your most progressed characters at the beginning of the season to create sort of a copy of your map progress and renowned, your found altars of Lilith, etc. All of that progress will then carry over to your Season 1 character. You can also choose to skip the campaign, grab your mount right away, and go straight to the new quest line, as long as you've beaten the campaign already. If you read between the lines, that means your new level 1 seasonal character will have access to more ability points and potions out of the gate, if you finish those renown track regional rewards. None of this is required though. So, what happens is your pre-season first character will be moved to the Eternal Realm. You can always continue that grind, but all the malignant heart powers, etc. will only be in the season. As a quick note, Both realms will get that aforementioned infusion of new legendaries and uniques. At the end of the season, your character will be transferred to the Eternal Realm with your OG character, so all of that work won't disappear. You just won't have access to the powers of the Caged Hearts and related mechanics once those 3 months are over and Season 2 begins. That should be around October 19th, by the way. At the end of the season of Malignant's reveal, a few other tidbits were surfaced. Blizzard is working on plans to improve other things across the game. For example, we know gems will eventually be stored in your Materials tab, freeing up precious space. On that, the Associate Game Director noted they have good plans and are working hard on that and more. As for new classes for Diablo 4, according to the General Manager, they are not announcing anything at this time. All right, well that's a lot to digest. So, let's switch gears and chat about how we're feeling about all this with my guest, Paul Tassi. Now is also a good time to drop a follow, by the way, if you've liked the show so far. As for me, I'm Fran Mirabella, aka FM3. You can catch me live streaming Diablo 4 and much more over on Twitch. We're live, so they should be able to see you. And let me get a quick audio check. Why don't you just do this is Paul Tassi, but why don't you tell me really fast what your history is with the Diablo franchise and what you've been up to in Diablo 4?
Yeah, I'm Paul Tassi. I write for Forbes. My history with the Diablo franchise, I'm told I'm a Diablo casual by all the current Diablo fans, but I played about 2,000 hours of Diablo 2 and probably like 1,500 of Diablo 3, or that might be reversed. But I played a lot of those games at various points in my life, kind of starting in late high school, early college, and then on and off in the interim since. I did not really do Diablo 3 seasons, but I played a ton of the game and the expansion around when that came out. I've obviously been really looking forward to Diablo 4, but I was kind of not thinking it was going to be as good as it is. Like, no offense to anyone, but like it was not really a sure thing given kind of the state of Blizzard for a little bit here, but I think they killed it. So here we are.
Nice. Yeah. I didn't play as much Diablo as you in the past, but I've played them all. But yeah, I never got to experience the seasons. I never got into like Path of Exile and other like sort of true ARPGs. But I've always been a fan of, what I call the gold standard of, ARPGs has always been Diablo. I mean, in one way or another, it's always got good stuff in it, even though I know there's a lot of feedback on where Diablo 3 had gone in the long run. Of course, Diablo Immortal and the choices it originally made. So the big news, of course, that we're discussing today is this seasonal update. Paul and I have a ton of experience, of course, in the Destiny world, which is all about seasons. I think this will be a really interesting conversation. I think we, of course, should start with, you got to start a new character. And I know, again, we didn't participate. I've never participated in an ARPG or a game that does that, where I've been grinding on a character. I'm level 90 right now, and I'm thinking, okay, I got to start over. They got this like to-do list almost before you get ready. So yeah, how do you feel about it now that you know more about the season, about some of the mechanics, and how it works?
I think for a lot of people, it's not going to be the most ideal. Like when I was kind of making this argument earlier, which got me in a lot of trouble with a lot of like hardcore
That's why
Diablo
you're here.
people. But yeah, my concern was that people, where this is kind of their first thing, they're going to be playing these characters for a really long time, and then the season's going to start, and they're going to be like, "Wait, I can't use this character at all. Like, what are you saying?" I think the rationale that they gave in this talk specifically was interesting, because they wanted to do a very kind of un-Destiny-like thing where they want everyone in the same playing field kind of season after season. So everyone starts from scratch. And since I've said all that, they kind of have done a few compromises and a few things with the Eternal characters. So now they've said for sure that all of your map vision and altars of Lilith and a lot of your renown will carry over. So that's stuff you can do on your Eternals to help seasons. Also, new uniques and new legendary aspects are dropping in the Eternal realm, so there's new stuff to farm for Eternal characters.
Yeah, we don't know how much of that yet, I don't think, which is definitely a big question for me of like, yeah, how much incentive, because there's tons of aspects and things it looks like that you're going to get as part of the season, but I don't know if they're saying, I don't know if you have more detail on what that was.
I'm not sure if there are seasonal aspects or if those are overall aspects. I feel like they would have to be overall, because I think the seasonal specific stuff is just going to be these hearts because the hearts all have their own powers, which are practically legendary aspects. So I would be a little surprised if there were like season only aspects, like unlegendary items.
I don't know. They framed it that way. I guess without, there's no point in speculating until the news just announced today. We're still wrapping our head around it. And you know how that news cycle goes. Like next thing you know, as we're talking, that Rod Ferguson replied to Paul on Twitter.
I just DM'd him to ask if they had the price for the season passes yet. But because I didn't hear one, and there was not one listed online. But it's got to be either $10 or $15. I bet it's $15. But
yeah, that's a good point. I think people were assuming it was 10 because of like the price of like the deluxe edition, then the ultimate, and but I think you're right. You can't buy it yet individually, huh?
No, there was a button on the site, and you clicked it, and it like went to a dead page, and now there's no button. So I guess they're not ready to announce that yet.
Yep. But yeah, I mean, I think let's dig into the psyche of. I'm right there with you. Of like, I'm level 90. I've been grinding a ton. I have one character. I'm definitely the type that I want to get all the Paragon points. I want to mess with those builds. And I feel this like hurried, like, all right, it's about to like sort of either be a second job is the way I joke about it, starting on July 20th, or it's just going to kind of sit in the background until I'm done with the seasonal stuff and go back to it, which is, it's a weird feeling to me. Without playing the season though, I'm not going to condemn, like, I'm definitely like, okay, I want to try this out and see how it feels to start a new character. But like, there's not going to be any leaderboards yet or anything, which I don't know if I'd be into anyway. But like, yeah, how do you feel? Like for real? And there was a lot of drama around. Well, you don't do seasons anyway, so. But that doesn't make it fun. We've played tons of games, and I have the same concern of like, I'm all down for grinding a new character, but I definitely have this feeling of reservation of like, man, I got to start over. I kind of just want to use my current character too. Both. I want both.
Yeah. Right. I'm kind of mixed on it. I think it's going to be okay because for me, eventually, I always like to have all the characters in every class and max those out as much as I can. So at least your seasonal characters do move over to Eternal when the season's done. So the work you're putting into, an alt in a season, you get to keep that, even if you're not keeping all the mechanics and the builds and everything. So for me, I have a 89 barbarian and a 75 rogue and a 37 druid that I'm probably going to delete. So if I just stick with my two mains, I have 3 classes that I have not done yet. You have 4. So I guess I'm going to be using seasonal time to start one of these alternate classes and like level it from scratch. That will be a new experience, and then the hearts will be a new experience. So for at least 3 seasons, I'll be doing a character I haven't done before. And then I guess you could stretch it where it's like, okay, well, I could build a melee rogue and then a bow rogue, and then those 2 different types of rogue. But what if this is a 3, 4, 5, 6 year game, I don't know if I'll be down with like, this is my 7th barbarian. Like I would think at a certain point you're going to run out of steam personally. But.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting when you frame it that way. Like, I wasn't prepared for that even, of like this idea. You're like, well, I'm going to play all these characters anyway because I'm really interested to check them out. So you almost have this seasonal, like this season I'll do this character, and they all kind of carry over and become like, you're going to play all this anyway. I was definitely more stuck on, I just really want to get to 100, and I'm not the type in any of these games. I can't do the bowling over dungeons, like just shredding. I'm always trying to get it to the point where it feels more balanced than trying to push that power, of course. I mean, at some point, you just become so powerful. But I guess to that end, I'm a little less like the loot cave mentality, even though that can be really beneficial. It burns me out in these games. And so I guess to that point, I personally still feel this like cutoff date for my druid. And I think we'll see how these new drops feel. Like maybe I will be going back and forth between both, because that variety becomes nice when you get, quite frankly, I'm in the 90s and I'm like, oh, it's a grind. I could use a break.
I think the way it's set up is I don't think the way Joe explained it to me when I interviewed him before launch, it doesn't seem like they're organizing it to necessarily be a second job. Like just to get like through the seasonal storyline is obviously not going to be that long. And then if you want to get through all 100 ranks of the battle pass, I still don't think it's going to even take that long, honestly. Mm-hmm. Like you definitely don't have to like get your new character to level 100 or anything close to that. Like I would imagine get a little ways into the Paragon system, complete these challenges, which do not look especially difficult. Granted, they only showed us like
it was chapter 1, like do a dungeon.
it's essentially Destiny seasonal challenges, where I'm sure some of them will be hard, but others are probably not going to be that hard. So this seems like something that I don't think you're going to have to devote like a bazillion hours to. And then also, so if you don't want to, then you can also simultaneously be like, all right, well, for a couple hours, I'm going to get one more level on my druid or whatever. So I think you can be able to balance them at least a little bit.
Yeah, I guess that's a good way to look at it. If I'm understanding you right, you're saying, well, you don't have to take this character to 100 necessarily to experience the season. You could.
Right.
But you're saying you'll finish the pass probably. You'll get to check out some of the aspects and like that's another perspective.
Yeah, I don't. It's other than the super hardcore people. Like, I don't think you're going to need to get anywhere near 100. I mean, you could because it's a 3-month season, and I mean, you're 90 after a month. So certainly, you could take it to 100 because it'll just transfer the Eternal Realm. So then you have a level 100, whatever. I just don't think if your goal is to complete the story, make a cool build, do 100 tiers of the Battle Pass. Can't imagine you'd have to go like too deep past like 60, 70, 75. Like I would not imagine it's going to be anything as more intense than that.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, so I'm looking at some of the reward track stuff. It's like, well, you get headstones, you get emotes. There are some weapon transmogs, as a reminder, that are going to be class specific, but the Awoken Cold Iron armor set is for all 5 classes. And so to just parallel it, it's like, oh, well, if you get your pass done, that's done, I assume, right? So now you can use that on both realms, right?
Both realms, all character classes. So it's a lot of stuff that unlocks for just the Battle Pass, yeah.
Yeah, it seems to me the only detail that we were touching on a little bit is like which of these new codex aspects and all that's going to be seasonal. Because the way they framed it to me, it sounded like that this was sort of their seasonal builds and some of that's going to go away. But then they're like, there's also uniques and legendary powers dropping into the Eternal Realm. So those will exist. So I'm not sure if it's a bit of both or all of both. You know
the
what
way
I mean?
I read it is I think the whole, whatever it's called, corrupted heart, malignant heart system,
Yeah, malignant hearts.
all of those, all of the powers attached to those are going away. They said there's like 32 of them, I think. They are introducing some new aspects like in the codex and like that you can get in dungeons or things like that. Or I think that can drop on legendaries now. I think all of that is going to be stuff in the Eternal Realm, and those are separate from the Malignant Hearts, which are their own thing, and that's going to go away because they're too powerful or whatever.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
So that is what I'm thinking, but I will know for sure once we get in.
Yeah. Yeah, and again, it's day one, everybody. So if you're getting at us in the comments, or you're like, oh, you might have learned something just moments after we did. But yeah, so I think let's touch a little bit on the Battle Pass stuff. You've had tons of experience reporting on this stuff. You've seen the evolution of the Battle Pass. How do you feel they're doing with it? What do you like about or don't like? I mean, are you into even the idea of grinding a Battle Pass for a season? How are you feeling about it?
It's pretty standard now, honestly. I mean, it's hard to get mad about Battle Passes, especially when they're like this. I think they very much are aware of Diablo 3's auction house launch problems, of Diablo Immortal's pay-to-win stuff, and they did not want to go anywhere near that. So they launched with the purely cosmetic shop, which admittedly does have very overpriced armors, but they're at least just transmog. And then this Battle Pass, all of the paid track is just cosmetics. So I think what stands out to me necessarily is like I didn't quite really even realize this, but we're always comparing things to Destiny, and Destiny has its own controversies with the Battle Pass. But past that, like it's the only thing paid in this whole season is the premium track of the Battle Pass. The season itself, the storyline, the like going through the little challenges book, like all of the stuff you're grinding, the Malignant Hearts, all of that is free.
Yeah,
which is like we compare it to Destiny, like Seasons of Deep, like you
same
gotta
reaction.
Buy salvages and deep dives, and the dungeon is sold separately, and like 18 of the weapons you can't get unless you buy the season. So this is a really interesting model where it's really just pay 10 or 15 bucks for this premium tier of the Battle Pass, and then everything else is free. Like it's kind of wild to see that difference, and it helps certainly that the paid stuff is all purely cosmetic, whereas Destiny's now starting to creep into crafting materials and all this crap that is a little pay to winny. So that is what I found kind of most interesting about this.
I had the same reaction. I was like, that's right, because I'm trained to think that there's like exclusive gameplay mechanics locked behind a seasonal pass. And as I looked, they said it before, but it took me watching the stream again to be like, really? And they're like, yeah, you're paying for premium cosmetics, everybody. Everything else is locked behind the battle pass, the seasonal pass, and then even then you have to hit levels. So if you want to do skips of tiers, you're still going to have to hit levels and play the game to unlock that stuff. So yeah, so far without playing it, I'm like, that's cool. It sets my expectation too that like, yeah, how much content is really there. So I guess we'll see, I think it's maybe a good time to compare it with like where Destiny has pushed the idea of like seasonal content, and like on paper, how do you think this looks versus how Destiny is currently handling seasonal content?
So I think Destiny will have more. I think Destiny will have more overall content. I mean, we can complain about this and that in a season, but like in terms of the sheer volume of what they're producing every 3 months with story stuff and cinematics and activities and loot, and like even if it's some of the things are reskins or reused assets or whatever, like I think it's going to be more substantial overall than the Diablo season. Like I would imagine that this storyline is going to be like a third, a half of one act, like that kind of level of storytelling. I don't imagine there's going to be any like crazy cinematics attached to it, like maybe those kind of like animated but not animated things like they did with the trailer, stuff like that. So I think Destiny wins in volume, but in terms of accessibility, I think Diablo is out in front here, because it's anyone can jump into this if you have the game. And I mean, it certainly helps if you beat in the campaign, whereas Destiny, you always feel behind, like you don't know what's going on with the story, and then everything costs a lot of money. It's different in that regard. So I think Destiny has like the cycle and the production schedule, at least on the PvE side, obviously, down to a science, whereas Diablo might have a little less, but then they're kind of like easing into this. But I guess, we'll see where they go.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very good point. Like one is free and one is not. And so right there, right away, you're already comparing apples and oranges. Plus, Destiny's been at seasons quite a while now. Quite frankly, I think testing the market and seeing like what do people like and what don't they like. Like we used to hardly have any lore, and now it's a pretty big expectation, and we do get the lore whether or not you like sort of where it goes. So yeah, when it comes to Diablo, I'm with you. Like that was a good point, is like how will it compare to an act? I never thought to quantify it that way, but yeah, I think I'd agree. I don't I mean, and even then, to your point, it's not necessarily going to have like all those bombastic cutscenes necessarily, but it's season 1. It's to their point, in their words, they're like, it's been 5 weeks, everybody. We are doing as much as possible. We did plan this stuff, but we're trying, out a season. And, Blizzard's a huge company though, and they've made a lot of money on Diablo, but they can only move so fast. So I
think Diablo's their main thing for the foreseeable future. Like, I don't have the most faith in Overwatch 2 right now. So I mean, I think Diablo is going to be their big thing. They're investing in the most going forward. I mean, who knows if they get Microsoft priorities change or they put them on some new thing. But given what a success Diablo 4 is, at least at launch with sales and all that, I think they're going to be really leaning hard into this. So I'd say at least 2 expansions, and then they're going to keep doing the seasonal model kind of forever. So
yeah. I mean, we know there's 2 more expansions that they said are coming down the road, and then they're doing seasonal content along with it. So definitely exciting. I know I only got you for a few more here, so would love to hear real fast if you do have a few more minutes.
Sure.
Is that okay?
Yeah.
What like quality of life playing Diablo 4? Is there a few things that have stood out for you that you're like, man, I really wish, seasonal content's great and all, but I really want to see this in the game, whether that's end game content or fixes for like, how you play.
Oh man, where to start? So don't get me wrong, I love the game.
Paul Tassi's top 5 ranked. No,
I could honestly I probably have written that, honestly.
Yeah, you have.
So there's a few different things. I think a lot of them are pretty common. They already are doing the gem tab. I think they realized that was a mistake kind of immediately. They have talked about potentially thinking about loadouts, because it is ridiculous to try and fully change your build to the point where you might as well not do it. Like I think it's like affordable. Like it only costs whatever rank you're at. It's some millions of gold, but it's not unsustainable.
It's not undoable.
The process of doing it is nuts. Like
unclicking every Paragon point. Yeah.
And then you got to reform all the, it's a lot. So I'm hoping there's an easier way to switch that. Although I do wonder if that's kind of meant to encourage seasonal play, to like do a build you haven't done before. in terms of endgame stuff, I just wrote about how I wish the rest of the open world would scale better. Like I said that I hope that there would be a World Tier 5 coming with Season 1, which there is not. That is clear now. But it's because nothing becomes challenging except pushing yourself into higher tier nightmare dungeons. That's essentially all you can do. Like once you get a certain power level with a build, like I'm almost soloing world bosses on my barbarian now.
Yeah.
Everything in Helltide dies in one shot. Legion events, you can't even see enemies before they die.
Yeah, they
Whispering Trees gives you nothing. Like I really liked Diablo's endgame when I first started because it had all these different things. It had all these like diverse things you could do. Now once you get to the end game, it's just nightmare dungeons, and then like I guess the path to Uber Lilith, which means nothing, but it's only one thing you can really do after like 70, 75, and like I would like to see the rest of the world scale and get better rewards as a result.
Yeah, I think that's like an easier start. I'm with you on those, and then like beyond that, yeah, I look all around, whether it's looking at MMOs or looking at games like Destiny, whatever. But having a true, dungeon, having LFG stuff, that also pairs with that would be huge. That's one of the bigger ones on my wish list. Is like, a raid or a 6-person whatever. But even on like doing dungeons, like you think about in a way. To me, the way I've described Diablo 4 is that it took Diablo and it did it in a really shiny, high-polished way. But Diablo is, 10, 20, 30 years old. So to me, it met those expectations and in a way exceeded because it's so shiny. But then I was like, it kind of lacks modernization of like, you'd think that Blizzard, one of the biggest, companies in the world, would have an LFG system built in for matchmaking. I just wanted to play this dungeon. Click on the dungeon, matchmake.
Yeah. Lost Ark had that. Exactly.
Oh, did it? Like, there you go.
So like they took some stuff, like they have the big open world now instead of the instances, but they did leave a lot of stuff like that behind to the point where like I don't really know why they did that, but
yeah. And again, I'm not going to shame them for the really honestly amazing job they did. Every game needs to get out the door and evolve, and this has been a huge undertaking. But as a gamer, you look at these things and can't help but think, yeah, you know what? It feels like they kind of did what was great in the past and they made it real nice and they did a good job, but I'm really expecting, more at this point. Maybe on that topic, since you touched on it real fast before you go, is the idea that, there's no load. It's another perfect example of what I'm talking about. There's like no loadouts that you can just maybe, I was describing it last night. I'm like, I kind of just want to work on my other druid pulverized build. Like I have a different build and I'm like, I have all these uniques. I just want to like a builder. I want to like put it together off to the side. You get the idea. Loadouts, never mind what it costs even. I just want the ability to like have the other stuff. But to what you touched on, the game seems to be saying like, this is who you're making. It is kind of a RPG that you're like locked into these choices. Otherwise it's like complex. It's costly. Does it feel like that was their intent? They don't want you to be messing around with it on a bunch of builds? Or do you think it's just like, well, it's just how it's been and we just don't have those tools?
I think what they wanted to do was marry the systems of Diablo 2 and 3. Whereas 2, it was like borderline impossible to respec in any meaningful way. And you mostly just had to start a new character if you wanted a new build from scratch, which was hardcore, but it was awful. Like I hated that system. Whereas in Diablo 3, you could change everything on the fly for free. It was just move runes around. Like it was nothing. So then people are saying that wasn't enough commitment. You don't have a class identity. So they did something in the middle, but I'm not sure what's in the middle quite works either. Like again, I don't care about a cost. If you want me to swap my loadout for 5 million gold or whatever, like I'll do it. It's just that like I've spent like 40 hours painstakingly building up this endgame barbarian build, and like I really want to try lead build to like see how it works. I've never done that. I have all the uniques, like you said. But like to change that over and then play around with it. If I like it, great. If I don't like it, it
but
sucks.
Then you lose what you had.
Again. Yeah. So it is not really a great system for experimentation. And like I don't know if they're purposefully trying to drive people into the seasonal model so you can like start from scratch and like, okay, I'm going to start a bleed build from the ground up now, and I won't be as mad. Or if it's just them trying to capture 2 and 3. But that is a point of frustration, I think, for me.
Yeah, I think everybody feels it. And it's interesting because it's like a nice problem to have, right? There's so many cool builds and things you're thinking about, but it's just a ton of work. And I do feel like there's a lot in the world of gaming, period, but especially Diablo. It's like, but that's just how it is. that's still not an explanation for what would be maybe more fun and what would make our lives easier. Because I
Look at
also want
Destiny. I mean,
yeah,
think about how annoying it was to just even without a cost, even with far less options, no Paragon points, it was still a giant pain in the ass to change around in the game your loadouts in Destiny before they introduced actual loadouts. And now it's like click, click, click. That's one of the best quality of life features Destiny's ever had. I would say. Like I have done so much more diverse experimentation when previously it was like, oh, it's an arc season. Okay, I guess I'm doing arc.
yeah.
3 months.
You just lock
like,
yourself
I would never
in.
change. You would never change essentially. So
Exactly.
So with Diablo, which is even more complex and even more of a pain in the ass, like I feel like you almost need that system even more than you would otherwise. And like
Big
I don't
time.
really know if the cost is worth it. I guess not having.
Yeah. You mean the cost to players?
Yes, not the
Not the
physical
cost of
cost,
yeah,
like
exactly.
the cost to your
I thought-
psyche of like thinking you can't
Metaphor.
do a new build. Yeah.
Exactly. So the very last question is actually, we've touched on like, I want this. I wish it had, maybe it's gonna, what is like just what is maybe your favorite thing about the Diablo 4 experience? What stood out to you as sort of the big, this is awesome, this is fun? Anything in particular?
Been enjoying the Paragon board. Like it's just so much more interesting and really gameplay opening than the old system, because it was like a bunch of stats and it was like whatever, like you're grinding, get minor bonuses. Here it's like half your build at least is figuring out a correct Paragon board configuration, or even if you're following a guide, it's still very fun to like navigate your way around and like level up the glyphs to buff the things. And like it's kind of a nerdy part of the game because like obviously I like just smashing around and killing things like in any Diablo franchise. But I think that's a really interesting addition that they kind of ganked from other places in PoE and like stuff. But I think it works really well within the context of the game, and that's something that it looked like I'm like, this is too complicated. I don't
At first.
this. Yeah, but once you figure it out, it's actually very fun and very engaging. So that's something I was surprised to have liked. I also like the open world a lot too. That's been impressive.
Yeah, just the visual variety in the open world is nice. But I'm with you on that. Yeah, the building is just, that's what got me, is you'd hit a piece on the Paragon board, a node, and you're like, man, I feel that power. And you sort of got addicted to that chase. But alongside then you'd maybe have a game-changing unique that started to push you. Like truly, it just changed your thinking of,
I got to buff uniques.
Yeah.
There's like 2 good uniques a class, maybe. So,
yeah, and it's fun.
No one can get.
I'm getting to the point where I'm like, I've been using the one that's really good for Druid, the Crone staff, and I'm so locked into it. Yeah, and I'm like, man, I want to try something different, but yeah, it's too much work.
There's not there's not too many great ones.
But yeah, Druid's actually got a lot of versatility, but I haven't touched the other players.
I really want to do Druid. I couldn't figure it out at like lower levels. I'm like, I'll just save it for a seasonal character. So
yeah, that's what everybody says. I've had a lot of fun with it. But all right, man. Well, I don't want to keep you any longer unless you have anything to add.
No, I'm good. I'm looking forward to the season. I really am. I think it's going to be fun. So
yeah, I'm excited.
It was a great showcase today. I thought they did a fantastic job.
Yeah, it's very like personal the way they're doing it, very open as opposed to like a couple trailers and like a patch notes update. It felt like they're like, we hear you and we're trying, and it felt really personal.
We'll see in 6 years if the enthusiasm maintains. But yeah, I think they're all very excited about it.
We know how that's gonna go. Yeah, you got to be careful of doing a game for too long. I think
everyone's like, oh, I wish Bungie had this sort of like passion and enthusiasm. It's like, okay, but like give them a break. It's like the 9th year of Destiny.
Yeah.
So like,
it's funny. They literally used to do live streams exactly, 30, maybe they were 30 to 45. And then that's where, 2 blues and a whatever token came from. And that was the end.
After that.
Yeah, that we're like, you know what? We don't like this live environment anymore. All right. Where's the best place for if people don't already follow or
follow me
Paul
on
Tassi?
Threads.
Yeah? Threads.net/Paul Tassi.
On Threads. You can follow me on Twitter, but I took a vow not to tweet this week.
Are you serious?
Threads, so I can write an article about it. Although I did tweet this stream so people would watch it.
Oh, dude, thank you. Look at that, man.
I'm not actually tweeting.
This dude is too nice. I'm in your debt. All right, Paul. Well, I'm going to let you go. Thanks very much for joining in, and hopefully we'll catch you again sometime.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me, man. Appreciate it.
All right. Later, Paul. Bye. Later. All right, folks. So, yeah, that was Paul Tassi. That was really awesome of him to make time for that. Please be sure to go follow Paul Tassi. You actually can't follow threads.net very easily, so I'm going to leave his Twitter where you can find his threads. Of course, Threads is the new Instagram and everything. But yeah, that was just one guest. Last week we had on Ka Spawn on Me. We got to talk about like, is the end game rewarding? And I hope to do more of this stuff. I would love to, hang out with you guys here on Twitch Chat Live. But if you're listening here on YouTube or on Spotify or elsewhere, make sure to follow me on Twitch, twitch.tv/FM3_, if you want to catch any of this live stuff.